Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and remember, Context is Everything Media Network founder and CEO John Michael is reading a textbook, cover to cover. This textbook was written in 2001. Yesterday, Napoleon era begins in France. Today, Napoleon era ends in France. Also yesterday, meet Napoleon's brother, Joe. Setting the Scene, Chapter 19, Section 5. Page 488 of 1007. Like and subscribe if you're interested in hearing more. The end of an era, setting the scene. Napoleon watched the battle for Russian city of Smolensk from a chair outside his tent. As fires lit up the walled city, he exclaimed, "It's like Vesuvius erupting. Don't you think this is a beautiful sight?" "Horrible, sire," our aide replied. "Bah!" snorted Napoleon. "Remember, gentlemen, what a Roman emperor said. The corpses of your enemies always smell sweet." In 1812, Napoleon pursued his dream of empire by invading Russia. The campaign began a chain of events that eventually led to his downfall. Napoleon's final defeat brought an end to the era of the French Revolution. Challenges to Napoleon's empire. Heading. Under Napoleon, French armies spread their ideas of the revolution across Europe. They backed liberal reforms in the lands they conquered. In some places, they helped install revolutionary governments that abolished titles of nobility, ended church privileges, opened careers to men of talent, and ended serfdom and manorial dues. The Napoleonic Code, too, was carried across Europe. French occupation sometimes brought economic benefits as well, by reducing trade barriers and stimulating industry. Impact of nationalism. Napoleon's success, however, contained seeds of defeat. Although nationalism spurred French armies to success, it worked against them too. Many Europeans who had welcomed the ideas of the French revolutions nevertheless saw Napoleon and his armies as a foreign oppressor. They resented the continental system and Napoleon's efforts to impose French culture. From Rome to Madrid to the Netherlands, nationalism unleashed revolts against France. In the German states, leaders encouraged national loyalty among German-speaking people to counter French influence. Resistance in Spain. Resistance to foreign rule bled French occupying forces in Spain. In 1808, Napoleon replaced the King of Spain with his own brother, Joseph Bonaparte. He also introduced reforms that sought to undermine the Spanish Catholic Church, but many Spaniards remained loyal to their former king and devout to the Church. When the Spanish resisted, the invaders' well-armed French forces responded with brutal repercussion. Far from crushing resistance, however, the French reaction further inflamed Spanish nationalism. Efforts to drive out the French intensified. Spanish patriots conducted a campaign of guerrilla warfare, or hit-and-run raids, against the French. So, like, guerrilla warfare is where you hide and you attack, rather than walking directly at each other and attacking. You hide and you attack. Small. That's how you do. Small army beats a big army. In Spanish, guerrilla means little war. Small bands of guerrillas, or guerrillas, we'll call it, because I'm not going to do that every time, ambushed French supply trains or troops before melting into the countryside. These attacks kept large numbers of French soldiers tied down in Spain when Napoleon needed them elsewhere. Eventually, the British sent an army under Arthur Welensky, later the Duke of Wellington, to help the Spanish fight France. War with Austria. Spanish resistance encouraged Austria to resume hostilities against the French. In 1805, at the Battle of Austerlitz, Napoleon had won a crushing victory against the Austro-Russian army of superior number. Now, in 1809, the Austrians sought revenge. But at once, Napoleon triumphed this time at the Battle of Wagram. Wagram? By the peace agreement that followed, Austria surrendered lands populated by more than 3 million subjects. The next year, after divorcing his wife Josephine, Napoleon married Austrian princess Marie-Louise. By marrying the daughter of the Habsburg emperor, he and his heirs could claim kinship with the royalty of Europe. Habsburgs. Rough. Look up the Habsburg jaw if you haven't already. Really bad. Defeat in Russia. Napoleon's alliance with the Austrian royal family was especially disturbing to Tsar Alexander I of Russia. The Russians were also unhappy with the economic efforts of Napoleon's continental system. Yet another cause for concern was that Napoleon had enlarged the Grand Duchy of Warsaw that bordered Russia in the west. These and other issues led to the Tsar to withdraw Russia from the continental system. Napoleon responded to the Tsar's actions by assembling his grand army. In 1812, more than 400,000 soldiers from France and other countries invaded Russia. To avoid battles with Napoleon, the Russians retreated eastward, burning crops and villages as they went. This scorched earth policy of French Hungary... The scorched earth policy left French hungry and cold as the winter came. Napoleon entered Moscow in September. He realized, though, that he was not able to feed and support his army through the long Russian winter. In October, he turned homeward. The 1,000-mile retreat from Moscow turned into a desperate battle for survival. Russian attacks and the brutal Russian winter took terrible toll. Philippe Paul de Séguier, an aide to Napoleon, described the grim scene as the remnants of the Grand Army returned. In Napoleon's wake was a mob of tattered ghosts draped in odd pieces of carpet, or great coats burned full of holes, their feet wrapped in all sorts of rags. We started in the horror as those skeletons of the soldiers went by. We stared in horror as the skeletons of soldiers went by, their gaunt grey faces covered with disfiguring beards, without weapons, with lowered heads, eyes on the ground, in absolute silence. Memoirs of Philippe de Séguier. Philippe Paul de Séguier. Only about 10,000 soldiers of the once proud Grand Army survived. That's a bad loss. What was it? 400,000 to 10,000. Only about 10,000 of the once proud Grand Army survived. Many died. Right. Others deserted. Okay. French General Michel Ney sadly concluded, "Genital famine and genital winter, rather than Russian bullets, have conquered the Grand Army." When I'm saying genital, I'm saying general. General. Napoleon rushed to Paris to raise a new force to defeat France. His reputation for success had been shattered. Rightfully so. The downfall of Napoleon. New heading. The disaster in Russia brought a new alliance of Russia, Britain, Austria, and Prussia against the weakened France. In 1813, they defeated Napoleon in the Battle of Nations at Leipzig. Exile and return. The next year, Napoleon abdicated, or stepped down from power. The victors exiled him to Elba, an island in the Mediterranean. They then recognized Louis XVIII, brother of Louis XVI, as French king. The restoration of Louis XVIII did not go smoothly. The Bourbon king agreed to accept the Napoleonic Code and honor the land settlements made during the Revolution. However, many émigrés rushed back to France bent on revenge. Émigrés meaning people that left France because they feared the revolution. An economic depression and the fear of a return to the old regime helped rekindle the loyalty to Napoleon. As the victorious Allies gathered in Vienna for a general peace conference, Napoleon escaped his island exile and returned to France. Soldiers flocked to his banner. As citizens cheered Napoleon's advance, Louis XVIII fled. In March 1815, the Emperor of the French entered Paris in triumph. He actually marched into Paris. I read about this in, I think the book was 48 Laws of Power, or one of those books by that guy. Green, I think his last name is. One of those books. And he goes into detail about his return, and it seems like a striking scene where this guy just walks down the middle of the road and everyone's following him, and it's like, how strange that must have been to see. Napoleon returning from exile and people just following him like a parade, spontaneous parade. And then he just walks in and says, I'm back. Back and ready. Where was I? Battle of Waterloo. Napoleon's triumph was short-lived. His star soared for only 100 days. While the Allies reassembled their forces, on June 18th, 1815, the opposing armies met near the town of Waterloo in Belgium. British forces under the Duke of Wellington and the Prussian army, condemned by General Blücher, crushed the French in an agonizing day-long battle. Once again, Napoleon was forced to abdicate and go into exile at St. Helena, a lonely island in South Atlantic. This time, he would not return. 1815 was the Battle of Waterloo. Legacy of Napoleon. Napoleon died in 1821, so 6 years after the Battle of Waterloo. But this legend lived on in France and around the world. His contemporaries, as well as historians, have long debated his legacy. Was he the revolution on horseback, as he claimed, or was he a traitor to the revolution? No one, however, questions Napoleon's impact on France and on Europe. The Napoleonic Code consolidated many changes of the revolution. The France of Napoleon was a centralized state with a constitution. Elections were held with expanded, though limited, suffrage, meaning right to vote. Many more citizens had rights to property and access to education than under the old regime. Still, French citizens lost many rights promised so fervently by Republicans during the convention. On the world stage, Napoleon's conquests spread the ideas of the revolution. He failed to make Europe into a French empire. Instead, he sparked nationalist feelings across Europe. The abolition of the Holy Roman Empire would eventually help create a new Germany. Holy Roman Empire was like Germany. Napoleon also had a dramatic impact across the Atlantic. In 1803, his decision to set all France's vast Louisiana territory in the American government doubled the size of the United States and ushered in an age of American expansion we'll talk about later. The Congress of Vienna. New heading. After Waterloo, diplomats and heads of state again sat down at the Congress of Vienna. They faced a monumental task of restoring stability and order in Europe after years of revolution and war. Gathering of leaders. And the Congress met for 10 months, from September 1814 to June 1815. Oh, so that was happening while Napoleon was back. It was a brilliant gathering of European leaders. Diplomats and royalty dined and danced, attended concerts and ballets, and enjoyed parties arranged by their hosts, Emperor Francis I of Austria. While the entertainment kept thousands of minor players busy, the real work fell to Prince Clemens von Metternich of Austria, Tsar Alexander I of Russia, and Lord Robert Castlereagh of Britain. Defeated France was represented by Prince Charles Maurice de Talleyrand. Goals of Congress. The goals of Congress. The chief goal of the Vienna decision-makers was to create a lasting peace by establishing a balance of power and protecting the system of monarchy. Each of the leaders also pursued his own goals. Metternich, the dominant figure of the Congress, again, the Prince of Austria, Metternich, dominant figure of Congress, wanted to restore the status quo, the way things were in Latin. In 1792, Alexander I, Russia, urged a holy alliance of Christian monarchs to suppress future revolutions. Lord Castlereagh, Britain, was determined to prevent a revival of French military power. The aged diplomat Talleyrand shrewdly played the other leaders against one another to get defeated France accepted as an equal partner. Balance of power. The peacemakers had redrew the map of Europe. To contain France's ambitions, they ringed France with strong countries. In the north, they added Belgium and Luxembourg to Holland to create the Kingdom of the Netherlands. I still don't understand the name Netherlands. Why is it called Netherlands, like the netherworld? Nether meaning beneath, but what's it beneath? It's at the northernmost point of the continental Europe. Whatever. Not the northernmost point, but the northern waters, or the North Sea, is abreasting it. To prevent French expansion eastward, they gave Prussia lands along the Rhine River. They also allowed Austria to reassert control over northern Italy. This policy of containment proved fairly successful in maintaining the peace. Restoration of monarchs. To turn back the clock to 1792, the architects of the peace promoted a principle of legitimacy, restoring hereditary monarchies that French Revolution and Napoleon had unseated. Even before the restored legitimate monarchs in Portugal and Spain and Italy, Italian states. Even before the Congress began, they had put Louis XVIII in French throne. Later, they restored legitimate monarchies to Portugal, Spain, and Italy. Problems of the peace. To protect the old order, Austria, Russia, Prussia, and Great Britain extended their wartime alliances into the post-war era. In the Quadruple Alliance, the four nations pledged to act together to maintain the balance of power and suppress revolutionary uprisings. The Vienna statesmen achieved their immediate goals, but they failed to foresee how powerful new forces, such as nationalism, would shake the foundations of Europe. They redrew national boundaries without any concern for national cultures. In Germany, they created a loosely organized German confederation with Austria as its official head. But many Germans who had battled Napoleon were already dreaming of a strong, united German nation. Their dream would not come true for more than 50 years, but the German unification story began in this period. Didn't go well. I'll tell you that. Spoiler alert. German unification didn't go well because it led to very bad things in the 20th century, shortly thereafter. Right. Looking ahead, despite clashes and controversies, we're almost done. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and please like if you're enjoying or if you're just sitting through it. Despite clashes and controversies, the Congress created a framework of peace. Its decisions influenced European politics for the next 100 years. Europe would not see war on a Napoleonic scale until 1914. The ideas of French Revolution were not destroyed at Vienna. In the next decades, the French Revolution would inspire people in Europe and Latin America to seek equality and liberty. The spirit of nationalism, ignited by France, ignited by Napoleon, also remained a powerful force. I hope you have a good day. I hope you enjoy the weather. And happy Memorial Day 2023. Or somber Memorial Day. That's what I meant. The way that we celebrate these holidays in the United States kind of distills the somber nature, really, of what it is. But for all those who've lost people in the armed forces, thank you for your family's service, and rest in peace. Absolutely. God bless. Goodbye.